Hey guys, many months ago I said that I would do a review of a menstrual cup called the Femme cup, and I'm finally going to get down to that. And the reason it took me so long was because when I first started using it, I had I thought it was just me. I thought there was just really something wrong with the way I was using it. I have used menstrual cups before. I've used the Diva cup. And I used that before I had had children and before I was married, and I had horrible things happen. So men, go away. It actually tore my hymen when I was in my 20s, and so lots of pain there because I couldn't get it out. When you put them in, when you put a menstrual cup in, you fold it up so that it is small. Well, once it gets inside, it pumps up like this. So if you've never had sex before, a menstrual cup is going to do some damage to you. And so I recommend that if you are a virgin, you don't use these. And I also recommend if you haven't had a baby, don't use these, because you're still pretty small in there if you haven't had babies, and this is pretty big. And it gets rigid when it's full of blood. And so it can be a traumatic experience to get these things in and out. Now, after you've had a baby, there's more space in there, and so then it becomes more comfortable to have something this large in there for very long. And that's why it took me 6 months to do this review, is because I thought there should be plenty of space in there. This time around, it should really work. I have a low cervix, which means that I needed a cup that was shorter, that didn't have one of those stems that stuck out, because then as you move, the cup moves with you, and so if it has a stem that sticks down, it can poke the walls of your vagina and cause abrasion, and it can hurt because it moves with you. What these actually do is, once you put them in there, so you're closing them to take all the air out, and then what you're doing is when you put it up in there, what it's doing is actually suctioning onto your cervix. So it goes like that. And this is why I don't like menstrual cups. The reason I don't like menstrual cups is it is plastic. There's no air permeability. You don't get air in there. And so your cervix is up here, like this. Cervix is up here, and this is the opening of your vagina. And no air can get through around this side. That's the point of it, which means that you've got all this nasty gick inside that menstrual cup just collecting. And here's your poor delicate cervix here getting exposed every time. Now this one is different. With the normal cervical cup, if you did yoga during that time, all of that gick would drip down onto your cervix and get on your cervix every time you were inverted. This one is different. If you really loved menstrual cups and you were a very active person, this is the menstrual cup to get, because it has a lip on the inside. This lip pokes on into the inside, which means that anytime that you tip, the blood gets caught, not going out here, but it gets caught in this rim on the inside so that it can't get out of the cervical cup. It can't get out of here. And so if you're very active and you just are determined to use a menstrual cup, this is a gem. You will never have any kind of leaking. However, getting this thing in and out, you will look like you just killed a deer with your bare hands. What happens is, with this one, the suction on this one is just so strong that you can't just pull it out. You can't just grab this and pull it out. What it will do is it will hold on, so you have it stuck on your cervix. If you pull on this, your cervix comes with it, which means that you're pulling on your uterus down. And what ended up happening with me is that a couple times the suction on there was so strong, and what'll end up happening is that if you pull and try to get it to come, what'll happen is that your cervix will stay stuck inside this, and it'll open up like this, but your cervix is stuck inside that neck, stuck. And you have to come up here and pinch it very hard to get that suction to break. So you're pinching, trying to get that suction to break. It breaks, and now you can get it out. But guess what happens when you're putting that much pressure on it? All the blood in here is getting forced up into your cervix. I know this sounds really disgusting. I could tell you how sick I've been. I'll do that in a second. Okay, so finally you come up here and what you're actually pinching in here, if this part pulls out, what you're actually having to pinch is the tip of your cervix to try and get that to break. Okay, so now it broke. You're pulling this out. Your poor cervix has all this gunk on it now. You pull this out, and now, having had to reach that far up in my vagina to break that seal, I now have blood all over my hands. And sometimes it becomes a two-part, two-hand pull. So one hand is holding here, trying to pull down here. The other hand is up in my vagina trying to get this to break, the seal to break. And so now I have got blood all over my hands. Now, if I'm in my own home, I can then kind of stick tissue down in my personal spots and then try to waddle over to the sink to wash my hands. But how are you going to do that in a public restroom? The other thing is, you have to clean this every time you take it out. You have to clean it. I'm going to just say, if you ever use one of these, smell it when it has blood in it and see just how rank. If it's only been in there for a couple hours, it doesn't smell real bad. But if you don't change it every 2 hours, it starts to smell like nasty blood. It does. Which means you need to go over and you need to be able to scrub it and get it really, really super clean before you put it back in. You don't want to have something that's that gross going back into your body unwashed. So when I would take it out, I would sit there and scrub it with my fingers and make sure I got into all the individual little crevices. There's quite a few crevices in here where bacteria could just lodge and be super, super happy. And you have to get in there and make sure it's all clean. And so at that point now, in order to get this back in, I pop that back in, I squeeze it in half. If you try to close this down too small, what will happen is the suction will be way too strong when you put it in, and it will intensify your cramps because it's just literally sitting there, and it won't, if you bring it down too small, the only thing that allows it to then get bigger is if blood is going into it to even out the pressure. And so it's literally trying to suck blood out of your cervix. And if there's no more blood that needs to come at that moment, it'll just stay half inflated like that. And the first month that I tried to use this, I had cramps so bad. I could not get the cramps to stop. I was sick, so sick. Such intense cramps. And it was because I hadn't figured out that I needed to only half squeeze it like that in order to get it in. I needed to not fold it all the way down so that the suction wouldn't be so intense. So if you're determined to use this, when you put it in, only try to take as little air out of it as possible and then to get it in so that it doesn't have that intense suction. And in order to get this in and do that correctly, you are shoving your whole hand up in there to get it, and then once it's on your cervix, you kind of twist it around and put your finger between it and the wall of your vagina to make sure that it's sitting on your cervix correctly. And it holds the blood in really well. It does a really great job. It's extremely convenient that way. But the last two things I wanted to talk about is that you cannot wear these overnight. You don't want to have these in for more than a few hours at a time. 8 hours is out of the question because of something called toxic shock syndrome. And what it means is that a nasty kind of bacteria can grow in these if they're left air-free for too long. Think botulism kind of nastiness. So even with tampons, they recommend that you don't wear them for more than 8 hours, that you never wear a tampon overnight, that instead you should wear a pad. Because it's an air-free environment up there. Even, I mean, at least a tampon, things can breathe a little bit, but with these suckers, there is no airflow. And so more than a couple hours is a really bad idea with these. Never, ever, ever wear these at night. Toxic shock syndrome will kill you. It's blood poisoning, high fevers. You die from toxic shock syndrome. Once you have it, you're pretty much gone. That's how serious it is. And so the last thing that this thing can do to you is it can tip your bladder. When you get it up in there and you're trying to get it out and the suction won't break, what it can actually do is as it's pulling on your cervix is, there's a wall between your cervix, your uterus, and your bladder, right? Well, as you're pulling your cervix down, your uterus starts to follow it, and then what happens is that your bladder next door gets tipped. And when your bladder next door gets tipped, what happens is that here's your bladder, you know, minding its own business, meant to hold pee and everything. But if you tip it out of place, then this spot right here at the bottom can never get rid of all the pee. So you have burning on urination, and you have a little pocket of urine, you know, that has all these things that your body needs to be able to get rid of, stuck right here in this tipped part of your bladder because that cervix got pulled on so hard. And so that's what happened to me, was that I had so many times where I couldn't get that seal to break on this, and I was trying to pull on my cervix to get it off, get the seal break. What happened was that it tipped my bladder, and I ended up getting not only a bladder infection, but a kidney infection from it. And I've had to go to the chiropractor and have my bladder tipped, which is really fun, because what they do is he puts his fingers right above your pubic bone, right there where your bladder should be sitting, but now it's tipped and it's a little lower. So he sticks his finger right in there, fingers in there right where you're already hurting, right at your bladder, and then pulls up towards your sternum with his fingers about 6 inches into your abdomen. So fun. Doesn't hurt at all. And so he did it once, and then my mom taught me how to do it then, because my bladder kept trying to tip itself back to where it was. I was in a lot of pain, and it makes you need to go pee all the time, even when you don't need to go pee. So not fun. So my take on menstrual cups in general, I've never found one that I absolutely loved. I have moments during my cycle when I like them for their convenience, but for me, I think I'm just a cloth pad girl, and even with cloth pads, I boil them. There are all sorts of things that love to eat blood, and if you're leaving blood in your pads, which happens if you're just washing them in the washing machine, it really doesn't sterilize them. Even if you're using chlorine, it really doesn't sterilize them. And historically, women would boil their pads. If you use a menstrual cup and you really love them, make sure that if you have a silicone one, you need a silicone one, you need to boil it. Every time you're done with it, it needs to be boiled for 10 minutes. And you need to get in there like with a toothbrush and get all the crevices. It is so important. It is, and if you have a lot of yeast infections or urinary tract infections or that kind of thing, I would kind of question your use of feminine hygiene stuff. So there's my horrible, horrible story about menstrual cups. I'm sorry that it didn't have a better review, but I just think it's too easy to mess up the delicate balance that you have inside yourself, and having something that bullies your body that harshly, I think, is a bad idea. So if you have any more questions, men, I hope you didn't make it through this one, because I'm a little horrified just listening to it myself. But we'll talk to you later.